Now, applying the principle that Christine quoted, the nothing about me without me, we have asked for the indulgence of Christine, Helena and Carmel to come on and talk about their own personal experiences, both of the trial and of their experiences with diabetes. Obviously, that is within the bounds of the comfort level that you have in sharing private information, so feel free to shoo me away if I ask something that you don't want to discuss. Maybe, and Helena, maybe you might kick us off. You might give us a sense of your own experience of diabetes and your involvement in the trial, how it started. I think you should be on, are you?
Is it on?
It is.
Yeah, so I count myself very fortunate that I was selected to be, or given the opportunity to be part of the trial. For me, it was a huge learning curve getting diagnosed with gestational diabetes during my pregnancy. I hadn't had it in my first pregnancy, so it was not something I was expecting. But yeah, just the level of care was phenomenal. Access to, treatments that I wouldn't have otherwise been able to access. Just for me, gave me peace of mind throughout my pregnancy that I was doing the best I could for myself, but also for my daughter who's with us now. But yeah, because for me, the biggest thing was the fear of her, putting her at greater risk in the future of having a condition that would be new to our family. And so, yeah, I just felt like it gave me the best opportunity to address those and prevent them. And within the safeguards of, participating in a trial where, you can rest assured that every safeguard is in place to ensure that you're safe and your baby's safe throughout the procedure.
Did you have any trepidation about getting involved in the trial? Because gestational diabetes tends to mean a fairly restricted diet, a lot of finger pricking, a lot of attention. It would seem to be one more thing at a stressful and worrying time. Did you have any concerns?
Well, I suppose having got the diagnosis, I think I could have probably followed the normal trajectory and been subjected to most of that anyway. But I faced the possibility that if I wasn't able to control my diet sufficiently enough with lifestyle and exercise, that I would have actually had to go down the route of insulin. So this gave me an alternative opportunity to access metformin, which when I delved into a bit of the literature myself, I found was, shown to be effective and was maybe available to other people that had diabetes prior to pregnancy. But obviously the need for the current study was why I was looking at people that were like myself that were just diagnosed during pregnancy. Sorry, I've probably gone a little bit off track. But yeah, so I suppose I knew by maybe having access to this medication that it would prevent me from needing insulin, which obviously, yeah, was a huge thing for me. So, and it did, so I'm thankful for that.
Thank you, Helena. Carmel, can I ask the same question of you, your experience of diabetes and the decision to get involved in the clinical trial?
Well, I've been diabetic since 1997, so I've been on insulin for a long time, taking a lot of injections, but there's always that extra worry when you're pregnant. And with Fidelma, she said I'd be a perfect candidate for this new trial, the EXPECT trial, and it was a randomization for background insulin. So I was actually randomized to stay on the insulin that I was using, the Levemir. So it was just extra care for me. There was no fear for me going forward with the trial. I had extra care. I had my regular pregnancy appointments, and then along with that, I had Fidelma's team taking care of me as well, so I was very lucky.
What level of experience or knowledge or insight did you have into clinical trials in general before you found yourself on one?
None. None. No, Fidelma told me more or less all about it. You do your own little bits of research, and I've always wanted to take part in something like this, being a type 1 diabetic for so long, and I'm always interested in new technology with diabetes, and going forward, and the technology I can use and take better care of my disease.
And by the way, thank you very much for appearing on the big screen throughout the event. You're very good to have done that. Can I ask Christine, same question of you, please?
Yeah, I've been a type 1 diabetic for 26 years. So I was diagnosed when I was 11. So I've seen, things. When I was first diagnosed, I was on an insulin called Mixstar 30, and it was just taken twice a day and not before you eat and things like that. So that has changed a lot throughout the years. So obviously, because of trials, I'd imagine. And then with pregnancy, I was under Helena McDonagh, and I was involved in a lot of core outcome sets, and I was a patient representative on that. And I suppose for a patient to be on core outcome sets, it's good for us to give our opinion. I suppose it was mentioned yesterday talking about different stakeholders, and physicians could be very like-minded and things like that, whereas patients may give a difference of opinion and certain things. Our goal could be different to a physician's goal possibly. So I was involved in a few core outcome sets throughout my 3 pregnancies, and I was involved in a trial with my last pregnancy as well, which I pulled out of, not because it was a pregnancy complication, not because of the trial and not because of my diabetes, but I did pull out of it, and my care, it wasn't subjective because of that. It was all, it all went to plan, and everything.
Do you get at the end of being involved in a trial as a patient, do you have a sense of pride in having contributed? Because we've seen the impact that it can have in one instance on one family. But the same thing, do you have a sense of, well, I've made a difference for the next person?
Oh, absolutely. I love it. It's great. And it's, it's a future. Do you know, what I feel as well is, I have 3 kids, and, what if one of them becomes a diabetic? And 2 daughters, what if one of them is pregnant in the future and they're a diabetic who's pregnant? What we're doing is for the future and what's to come. So no, there's huge pride there, absolutely.
I might go to your namesake. Christine, you mentioned the cultural shift and the practice shift in the inclusion of patients in design, not just in participation. Has that significantly impacted in trial methodology, do you think?
I think so. It's something that we're beginning to see more and more. So from a very practical viewpoint, when you start off trying to get trial up and running, you need to get ethical approval and you need to get a protocol approved. And you're much more statistically likely to get those things approved if you have evidence of patient and public involvement. And that goes right through. It has the benefit of making the protocols more patient-friendly, less cumbersome, right through to the tail end, which is publication. So you want your results to be disseminated to the community that will be impacted by research. So you're much more likely to get your research published in a high-impact journal if you have evidence of patient and public involvement. So it can reach more clinicians and then in turn can reach more patients. So I think the whole landscape is changing really very much so in the last kind of 5 to 10 years.
As a final word on this, Fidelma, maybe you might talk briefly, if you would, you mentioned about the inclusion of women, and particularly women who have gestational diabetes, in the general study of diabetes. What difference has that made? What contribution has it made to the broader study?
Well, the first thing is that if you have a broad grouping of people within the trial, I think your trial results have more validity for a greater number of people. So in Ireland, our population isn't heavily contributed to by non-Caucasian people, but there is a certain group of people there. So when you're designing and developing and looking at information leaflets and talking to patients, I think it's really, really important that you make even greater effort for non-Caucasian people where English is not the first language to include them into the study.
I have it wrong? Is being of non-Caucasian ethnicity a contributing factor in gestational diabetes? Have I got that right?
So people who are non-Caucasian, so people from the African subcontinent, Indian, Asian, they all have a much higher chance of developing gestational diabetes. So it's important that we include them. The second big difference, especially in the Indo-Asian population, is that they can get gestational diabetes even if they're very thin. So you have this concept of the thin, unhealthy person rather than the obese, unhealthy who will get diabetes. And although the number we collected is only 20% of the total cohort, if we use core outcome sets going forward, then our 20% of non-Caucasian people could perhaps be included or compared or contrasted or looked at in a bigger data set of people with those ethnicities. So the core outcome sets are really important for that, trying to be inclusive of all different types of women who develop diabetes is important. When it comes to the the traveller women. We've done some work on this before. So the traveller population have twice the obesity and twice the diabetes rates as the background population. And their longevity is 10 to 15 years younger. So it's really important that we focus on their health. And pregnancy is a really good time to do it. So I've really been honoured to look after these 11 women from the travelling community who developed gestational diabetes. And they were fantastic patients. There was, sometimes people say, oh, well, maybe they won't be able to comply, maybe they won't do this. The vast majority of them behaved like any other woman in the trial. So that really makes me hopeful for other trials, perhaps on obesity prevention or perhaps on cardiovascular disease prevention in that population who mainly develop type 2 diabetes.
Fidelma, thank you. And likewise, thank you to our entire panel. Christine, Fidelma, Carmel, Helena, Christine and Paddy. Thank you all very much, folks.